Welcome, everybody, to episode 73 of PT Shop Talk. On today's episodes, we dive into concussions and we finish up with our top three favorite, most fun slash exciting live sporting events. With me, as always, is Nick Doling and Jeremy Van Klompenberg. I didn't know what fun nicknames were going to be for exciting events. Is there like exciting mascot I could have done? I don't know.
Maybe
This
We could
this
have
one
called
was a little
someone the
harder.
wave. The
The
wave.
wave.
Thunder.
Hmm. What else is cool? What's your favorite arena like celebration? Like the
Oh,
wave,
the
right?
Skull chant. If you ever done the Skull chant live, it's the best.
It hits, huh?
It's lit.
Especially
Mm.
like last year we went to a game and went to a first Monday Night Football game with the boys. Took Connor and Gunner to it. And they when we took the lead against the Bears, unfortunately we couldn't hold on to it. Spoiler. But after that, it was like going to 2 minute warning. They did the Skull chant. That place was electric. That was a
Ooh.
lot of fun. It was fun.
Ooh.
It was a blast. Jerry, would you agree, or you ever
Yeah,
been to the
no,
bank
even
and did it?
I've not been to the bank.
Hmm.
But man, even when they were playing in England the other day, right? Like
Yeah,
that was cool to see. Like they got into it. It
it
was it was pretty
travels.
sweet. Yeah, travels
It
well.
travels. Where were they at? Where
Jared
they?
Allen got him hyped too.
Yeah,
But
they were somewhere. Oops, I can't even remember what game. Sometimes you just watch too much of it, it just blurs together. But they were doing a road game, and the fan base for us for the old Vikings traveled better than the home team, and they did the Skull chant somewhere, and it was like, ooh, that's kind of
that'll
ballsy.
probably be this weekend in LA or
Well,
this Thursday.
they say for sure the Chargers. I don't know
Yeah.
about the Rams fan base. They won the Super Bowl 3 years ago, but maybe they're
Yeah.
stronger. But they say the Chargers and the Raiders. Every other team basically. Like, did you guys see the video of the like when Pittsburgh played in Vegas 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
That was like 80-90% Steelers fans.
Yeah.
With and
Yeah,
they
not good.
even like had some gig where they gave out the yellow terrible towels to everybody.
Really?
Hmm.
Yep.
At a Raiders home game.
No, like the Raiders,
Interesting.
like the Steelers organized it, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, like they all had it. You got to check it out. It's like
That's
unreal to
wild.
think that's a road game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Casey, anything to add? Do any
No,
thoughts?
I think that my favorite sporting event thing is they used to do the Oblivious cam, and I always found that to be
Oh,
mighty fun, where they would just
mm,
find somebody in the crowd that was on their phone and just see how long the camera could stay on them before they would
hmm.
notice, and everybody
Yeah,
would be cheering and screaming. And these people were just oblivious. It's just a fun moment.
the old
I,
kiss cam.
Better
Ever?
than a
Yeah.
kiss cam?
I like it better than a kiss cam. I
I've
don't know. The
never.
kiss cam is sweet. Like it's a cute thing, but like it doesn't necessarily. I'm not a voyeur. I
Ooh.
don't doesn't excite me to see other people smooch. Doesn't do
I
much
don't
for
know.
me.
I
No,
mean,
what's kind of
unless
funny is you get like the brother sister combos and they're like, no.
yeah, right. And
Kind of funny.
I think it's more of that. I mean, sometimes there's a funny one, but watching the reactions can be half of it. But you got to admit, isn't a part of it? Be you and your wife might end up on it.
Again, I'm not an exhibitionist either, Nick. I don't enjoy smooching in front of people. It's not my
Oh,
thing.
not at the
Casey turns and
PDAs.
gives a little high
High
five.
five, yeah. They
That was a
go
big movement in
knuckles. Way to
in the
go, bud.
'90s was get away from the PDAs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't need to see that.
Not even a little peck
Yeah.
on Lacey's cheek.
Hmm. That
If
maybe. That's a little sweet. That's kind of cute.
if the cam was on you, you'd do it.
Well,
You
yeah.
would do it for the cam.
I don't think I'd lay a big, huge one though. Nick, you seem like a dude that would just crush it. Like
I'd probably
a dip and kiss even.
I'd probably do a dip and a kiss,
Yeah.
or just like a nice wrap around the shells,
Oh,
like
and then pumping the fist with the other arm, I assume.
yeah, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
little
That
Breakfast Club, like
Woo.
that seems like your move for sure.
Yeah.
maybe we'll see. Yeah,
We need to attend more
maybe.
events together.
Yeah, I guess I forget about baseball too. And you need stuff like that at
Because
baseball
it's not a
events
real
because
sport.
It's a very
it's a
boring
fantastic. I think it's a
event.
fantastic
It's
sport. I think it's
ah
phenomenal athletes, man. It's such skill.
yeah. They're the guys that can't play football or basketball.
But live, you need you need something to keep your crowd engaged because it's so
Yeah, you
quiet.
do like
Yeah, live
you gotta
baseball, you
run
gotta have
against
something all the time.
Yeah.
bat spins,
You don't have,
chase the
right.
mascot around the
Oh yeah, like a
field.
hot dog race.
Like that's way better than the actual game.
You almost have to argue that when you like the hierarchy of where commentators are most valuable has to be like baseball, you know,
Yeah.
like because baseball's got to be
So much dead air.
right, and so is golf. Like if you just to watch that stuff
Golf is exciting.
silent though,
Golf is come on.
but baseball, like you need if baseball was on TV without commentators, it'd be awful. It's just you're trying to follow. They they
I
they
think
add such depth to it. Is what my point is. Whereas like football commentators,
agreed.
you could tell sometimes they're just like sticking to their script points, and the play-by-play guy reacts, whatever.
You know what though? I like you know who's an underrated football guy? Tony
Go on.
Romo.
You think he's underrated?
Tony Romo. I do. Like it's crazy. Like he goes up there and he's just like, yeah, I mean, this is what I'd see here. Like they're probably gonna hit the slant on the left. And then
Yeah.
like the amount of times that he's right is insane for how terrible like they that he was. Like,
I mean,
to be honest
that
with
was
you.
like a thing. That was a thing like 2, 3 years ago. People were calling it like Romo vision or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Dude,
he's
I feel like
good.
he's dialed it back a lot. I heard he got that like feedback to quit doing it so much. And I do feel like he doesn't do it as much anymore.
oh,
I
I
think that
haven't.
was sweet.
I don't know if
Yeah, I
I've
thought it was
watched a
cool too.
game with him this year in
I
the gym.
he's definitely better than Tom Brady. Tom Brady's like the sweetest boy in the world. He's like, oh,
Tom's
these
coming along. Tom's coming.
what
I
a
You know
caught a
what
little
sweetheart.
bit of
though?
the late game. He's getting
You
Well,
know
better.
and
what's
now he
wild
can't
though?
say
He
anything
can't
about
do
anybody.
anything.
Yeah. Now he's got to be like, oh, that was a play.
They're like,
Can't
how
say it was good
genius
or
was that?
bad.
Like, yeah, he's got to pick
You
a side.
sign
He's got to
you
pick a
sign a
plan.
$300 million contract. You leverage that to buy a part of the Raiders. And now you can't go to team meetings. You can't go to production meetings. You can't be in another team's facilities. You can't comment on the officiating in any way.
So is
So it's like,
Fox? You
how
think
are you going
Fox
to
is upset
still
at this?
They have to be.
probably
I
Right?
mean, what a
like
Right?
severely limited your
like
capabilities.
you can't do your job. Like he can't even zoom into a production
No,
meeting.
it's
Like
it's
that's
weird because you
crazy.
go and you buy the
Yeah.
Raiders or you go in on buying the Raiders, and it's a weird thing.
Yeah, it'd be like hiring a therapist and being like, but you can't now I can't use my hands. Just so you know, I've insured them and I'm not allowed to
Mhm.
use them to do my job.
Or
You can still do your
something like
job,
I
but
can't
like,
like
Can't give
I can
advice
do it,
even.
but I
Can't
can't
educate.
yeah.
continually learn anything. I gotta stick with everything I came out of school with.
Yeah.
That's just a weird deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of neat.
Great.
It's weird that that's not like a grounds to like a breach of contract. Like you
Right.
contracted to do a specific job and you can't perform that job anymore. You should get let go, right?
Yeah. Probably best for
Well, I
everybody.
gotta
You wouldn't
imagine
want-
he probably had some lawyers look over that. I would
Well,
guess.
probably.
I
When
don't
you
know.
got $300
It's a
million on the line. Yeah.
TB12 system. You just gotta have faith, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Couple
Yeah.
wheatgrass shots.
That's
It'll
how he
all work
signed the
out.
letter. He signed the letter to Raiders Nation, LFG.
LFG. Just win,
Oh.
baby. Just
He's the
win.
new Al Davis.
I love the pictures of him with Al's haircut. Like it's kills
The
me.
hair? Yeah.
Yeah, it looks so good. I love it.
Al's or Mark's. 'Cause
Mark, right?
Mark's is
He's got
terrible.
like the straight bangs, right? Is that Mark?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking of. Tom's
Yeah.
got the Mark haircut they've plastered on him.
Who who just he's gotta know that's terrible.
Do you
Yeah.
think
Well,
like
Has
he's
to.
like, I am so rich, I'm gonna purposely make myself
you
look
think it's
so god awful that if I
yeah,
do find
so Casey,
somebody
you think
that's
this whole
true
thing,
love,
Mark Davis is just ribbing everybody?
yeah, he
Right?
has to be. Like Jeremy said, there's no way any
It's like
human
the
being
worst
on
haircut.
He's
earth.
dating
If
he's
you're
dating
out
some
there,
26-year-old chick too.
yeah,
Like he's Belichicking it right now.
right.
Like
If you're
there's just
listening to this pod, go to Google right now, search Google images for Mark Davis haircut, and you will not be ashamed of doing that. I mean, Not
Chucky.
be
I
disappointed.
mean,
Yeah.
it's bad.
It's like a
Bad.
poor man's He-Man, like a middle-aged
Oh,
He-Man,
that
Dutch
that's
boy
a
haircut.
very good way to put it. I
Yeah.
enjoy that.
Yep. Yeah. You would almost think that Casey's got it. Where we go, YouTube
Oh,
viewers.
oh, oh,
Oh
oh,
There
oh,
it
my
is. Oh my
goodness.
oh.
gosh.
That's Chucky-esque.
That's good.
That's just a face to love. Like, again, this man has more money than anybody knows what to do with. And obviously has the internet at this point. So people have to be like, hey,
Maybe
he's
cut your
read
hair.
about himself, right? Like, it's horrendous.
Yeah. He looks like he could be like a serial murderer in a movie. That's really
Yeah,
what he
I mean,
looks
he
like.
definitely looks like
Oh, watch it, guys.
the dude that's got somebody in a
Defamation.
basement.
See, even that, he's still handsome. Tommy's still Tommy.
Yeah, he's got a look for sure. Don't
TV
get me wrong.
12.
Oh man.
They said he was
Yeah.
going to come back for as a grad student for Michigan as at quarterback
Oh yeah?
as Dom Grady.
They could use him.
Uh,
They could use him.
Makes sense.
they could.
Maybe.
Oh
But who knows?
man.
It all depends on maybe their quarterback goes down with a head injury. Then what?
What?
Ooh.
Right?
What?
Nice little segue into our concussion talk is kind of Tua is, I guess, a driving force. So maybe talk about this week because he
Hmm.
is gonna be back. It sounds like
Yeah.
he's decided to continue to pursue football. He's been cleared, and
Okay.
so it brings up a lot of interesting questions.
Hmm.
First off, I mean, what do you guys think about him deciding to play?
Well, should we back up and lay a little
Yeah,
background just in case anybody who happens to maybe not follow the NFL that closely or the Miami Dolphins that closely, but
yeah, lay some pipe, as they say.
he sustained it.
That's not what
He
they say.
sustained his
That's not the saying.
I believe his
That's
fourth
No,
doc.
sorry.
no, different context.
Mm,
So I
I
think if
get
you
it.
go back up, the
Build the
story,
foundation.
yeah, the main
But
story
don't you
begins
put
like
the
two
pipe
seasons
first?
ago, right? Like 2 seasons ago when he had that horrendous concussion playing against the Cincinnati Bengals in prime time, like right at midfield, that they replayed repeatedly and his body went stiff. He had another one that knocked him out of the playoffs that same season. Got through last year unscathed, played really, really well, earned himself
Yeah,
like what the most lucrative contract in the history of football for, at least for a short period of time before it was surpassed. Um, but then September 12th, I think is week 2, they're playing Buffalo again on prime time, and he's scrambling in the red zone trying to get it for a touchdown and leads with his helmet. Totally legal play. He was the one kind of leading in and takes another pop to the head, lands really awkwardly, and then once again his body stiffens up. His body goes kind of decorticate, I think would be the true description of it neurologically, with his fingers all kind of jutted out, right stiff to his body. And yeah, he hasn't played since then. I think we were talking at PPS that, in some ways you're wondering if there's a lot of rumors if he's just going to retire flat out, maybe never play again and try to just protect his dome. Um,
yeah.
yeah. But after missing 4, there's a little video right there for our YouTube watchers. Just a
Oof.
rough visual.
Yeah, it's not a good look for a league that is already getting a lot of heat for concussions. Hasn't seemed to improve a whole lot over the years. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough decision to make. It's a lot of money, right? Like I
I
assume you forfeit that cash if you decide to retire early. So,
I don't think he was going to. I think there was some like I think there was some injury guarantee in there, right?
Oh yeah.
But um
and I assume you have
there's one
insurance on
piece
those kind of things, but
there's one piece of it. I swear he was supposed to get like 25 million next year and 45 million the next or 41 or something.
It's got
I'll have to
staggered
look it
pay.
up. But
But I know a huge chunk's
but
guaranteed
it's
though.
yeah. And so, you know, one like crazy that he got, I mean, it's crazy that he got cleared. I mean, I'm not a neurologist by any sense of the imagination, but I'm going, those are three pretty severe injuries within a 2 year span, or maybe
Hmm.
2.5 year span. And,
Hmm.
but I guess I can appreciate the side that you're saying, hey, we're going to leave it up to the medical professionals. If he gets cleared, he's a grown man. He can make his
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah.
And, so I guess I can appreciate that. I mean, I don't know, how does the NFL look if they're going like, we're going to ban you from playing? I don't know.
Yeah. Which
Um,
is this has been my take since that happened. Since that had happened, I remember telling my wife, and then again when this came up at PPS, I have no doubt in my mind that at least somebody from the NFL front office had to have called the Dolphins. It's at some point
yeah.
after that and was like, "Hey, whether they said however extreme that conversation was, but I would have to think they had had a conversation about how we don't really want this on primetime television or any television again. Like, so whenever you bring him back, make sure that he's about as healthy as you could possibly guarantee him to be, you know, because like Casey said, I mean, they're a brand that's tried so hard to build on player safety. And you could argue the pros and cons of that and how effective they've been at it. Um, but it has moved in, I guess no doubt it's a safer direction, you know. Um,
So this, I just looked it up. Bleacher Report says the Dolphins had a $49.3 million insurance policy on Tua. Um, so his 4 year, $212.4 million contract included 167 million in injury guarantees,
Mhm.
43 which had already been paid. So the
mm,
Dolphins would have been obligated to pay out another $124 million.
wow.
Man,
So that even like from a decision making standpoint for Tua, man, I can appreciate it. Like they were talking about it this morning on Greeny, and and I get it too, right? They're like he made a quote to the effect of like, I love this game even if it kills me. And they're like, that's not the first time we've heard that. But then you're going, well, maybe we should change that. But then you're going also like that attitude in itself is a very big driving force in what gets a player to that level, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you're like, how do you?
It's not
I don't
unique to
know.
Tua. Like you're saying, you're speaking in
You're right.
generalities, but like I remember Junior Seau, he famously said that he would never, I mean, he took his own life after
Yeah,
this, but I remember him saying that he would never change, a single thing about the way he played. And he played very violently, very aggressively.
yeah.
And the other
And they had
parallel,
nowhere near the safety measures, right?
correct.
That we have
Yeah. And
today.
defensive guys don't. I mean, they're still getting head trauma. They're just
But
the
they're
ones kind of like leading it, I guess.
but the head, I mean, helmets in general look very, very different today
Oh,
than what they did
absolutely.
in
But like when you look at,
97,
but when I'm talking about player protection in the NFL, particularly for head injuries,
Yeah.
it's dominated by the offense and special teams. Like they've
Yep.
protected that group, returners, rightfully so for returners. I mean, if you go back, it's really fun to watch like any of those NFL networks, like top 10 scariest hitters of all time, or scariest football players of all time, hardest hitters of all time.
Yeah.
And they've even stopped. I don't even think they've even done those in the last 10 years. You got to go back 10, 12 years to even find them on YouTube. And all those
Probably
guys are,
Legion of Boom was
yeah,
probably the last ones.
maybe, but even that they couldn't, they had to play a lot safer. They had to, but my point is all these guys who exist on these top tens, they've all been long retired and their highlight reels are
Jack
completely illegal.
Lambert.
Yeah, Jack Lambert, right?
Yeah,
Um,
Ronnie Lott,
I think Ray Lewis is probably the most contemporary guy, and half of his
Yeah.
highlights would now be illegal.
Yeah, James Harrison. I mean, he got flagged for a ton of his stuff too, but
Right,
I
right.
mean,
He
that
got flagged a
was
lot.
he was
so
definitely near the end. I mean, he was the guy that was a big champion of not doing the safety
the
stuff,
old
right?
school. Yeah.
Because he was
Yeah,
like,
No,
I can't play my game anymore. I think was, one of his quotes. It's
right.
like,
Yeah,
but then it's really interesting though that he's also, so he's cleared, he's gonna
yeah.
play. Okay, that's your decision. But he's also not gonna wear a guardian cap, which is also
Is he
kind of
not?
wild.
Is he
No,
not? Hmm.
yeah.
Well, you
At
don't
least
want
from
to
when I read
look
it.
like an idiot out there.
They
Oh,
do look very foolish,
gee. But
but as we
you're
just
seeing
said,
more and more guys
167.
on defense, right? And you're like, gosh, there's some level of it too where you're going like, what does it matter how I look if I I'm not functioning in my later years in life, Like,
Right. Can we
I don't
agree the
know.
Guardian caps, like we're laughing at them now, and they do look really goofy right now. They remind me of
Yeah.
Spaceballs, like
Oh yeah,
110%.
Like,
But
surrounded
yeah,
by assholes.
yeah. But my point, like, how fast this stuff evolved. 10 year, 20, 2034. I bet
yeah,
you the majority will be wearing them
it'd
or
be the
something.
standard.
It'll
I
be
would assume
something
it'll
like
be
that.
required, at that
Yep.
point. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
I'm actually very surprised. I mean, there's a few folks wearing them now, but it's like, why even bother with the transition phase? Just make it happen. Like, it's stupid to me.
well,
Like, you
I don't
have
know if
them,
they've
you've
been
approved them.
I don't think there's been a single like the only teams I've watched like start to finish have been the Vikings, and I don't think they have a single player who's wore one.
No, they don't. I've seen Jabril Peppers was wearing one for the Patriots. I swear there was somebody for the Browns that was wearing one too,
Mhm.
but they're getting to be a little bit, more popular, I guess. But um, yeah, it's just surprising where you're like, yeah, I'm also going to play, and I'm also not going to utilize all of the protection that's available to me to
Mhm.
play.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and I mean, I've never wore
interesting.
one, but I can't imagine they really affect your ability to play that much, right? I
I
mean,
Mm,
wouldn't think so either.
seem like they'd be lightweight, but
yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully
they
still effective.
no, obviously wouldn't think it would affect your head movement, neck mobility, or your vision. So it's like seems to me like a knockout of the park, right? Like, why
Kind of
wouldn't you
seems
wear
like
them?
they
But
and it's when you look at the effectiveness, you'd have to think like just counter coup injuries, stuff like that. Presumably, like when your head hits the ground,
Blunt
like
the
that would
force.
seem to be where it would mitigate, I guess, the most stress is where I'd think.
Well, or if you got hit crown
Some
to crown, I mean,
yeah,
you got
crown to
another
crown or side to
layer of,
side.
right,
yep, you
still
got another layer
decelerating
of,
more.
yeah, force dissipation. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I think you're right.
interesting stuff.
Casey made a comment last weekend about cowboy collars kind of making a comeback, and who's
Yeah.
to say those
About
couldn't
time.
help a little bit because they, help modulate some of the flexion extension of the cervical spine. I mean, a little bit of
Yeah.
the whiplash effect that comes with it.
Yeah. Cowboy collar.
It
Now the
looks
interest,
so cool. That's like the opposite of a guardian cap, right? I don't
yeah.
think there's a piece of football equipment out there that makes you look cooler.
Does the cowboy collar offset that?
Those might be two things you can't wear together. The guardian cap
Too much
may affect the
guardian cap. You
cowboy
can't even
collar.
turn your head or
Yeah.
look up.
Yeah, the only
So,
thing
so
cooler looking is like smoking on the football field. That's probably the only thing that makes you
That's
look
pretty old
cooler
school.
than
Pretty
wearing
old
a
school.
cowboy collar, if I'm gonna be honest.
Seems like a very John
so
Madden thing. Bum
you gotta
Phillips.
you gotta look up some of the old James Harrison at Kent State. Like
Yeah.
he wore a cowboy collar, and that
Mhm.
dude, it's just crazy, right? That was,
Yeah.
I think it
Well,
was late
the
90s,
90s
but it
dominated
was
the
like,
cowboy. They
but I'm
dominated the
going,
90s.
man, it seemed like so much later than in my memory, at least. Like I felt like those were pretty much gone by that time.
Yeah.
But he looks just I mean, he's a monster anyways,
Yeah, he is.
but it's like he just
He's
looks
the real
cartoony.
Debo.
He looks cartoony. I mean, like that is scary, right?
Like it's hanging off the
Imagine
top of
that
his
dude
helmet.
coming at you.
Hmm.
What?
Yeah, that's a
I'm
good one.
Batman.
Yeah. That's a one
Silly.
it's just a big fella.
So what are you guys seeing? Like, how much are you guys seeing in the clinic for concussions? Like, or what are you guys seeing in the, in terms of treatment strategies, things along that line?
Yeah, I think like for me, I'll go first. I'm a little unique because I'm definitely more of a chronic pain clinic, but one of my side hustle specialties is vestibular. So I do get some post-concussive patients due to dizziness. Is probably the number one driver for me to get them. I don't see a lot of sports med folks, but So for me, when I see him, it's definitely like vestibular heavy, and I think people think you're like a dizzy specialist, so it's all the same thing. Which
Yeah.
once the concussions get in, it's like, well,
Mhm.
it's a tracking issue, it's a cognition issue, it's not vestibular hypofunction.
Mhm.
Some of them, I suppose, could have BPPV. I've never had one come in for dizziness, get assessed for BPPV and be positive, but I suppose trauma to the head can cause it. It's not
It's
the
all,
most common cause of BPPV, but
when you break them into those trajectories, I mean, it's possible.
right.
I've never seen a
Yeah,
lot
a
of
little bit of
pure,
overlap, right?
yeah. Yeah, and I suppose it always, to me, the trajectory is always fit. I mean, that was the terminology that kind of became popular about 5 years ago. But I guess it makes sense, follow some logical sense based on like which portion of the brain, which lobe got affected the most, you know? And to
Yeah,
your
he could.
point,
Yeah.
maybe the lateral side, like the parietal lobes aren't, you know, probably the least affected where it's more frontal, you know, affecting a
Yeah.
lot of motion, things like that.
Again, the hit the turf, back of your head hits. It's some cerebellar stuff too, but um, yeah. So they always come to me for more like vestibular stuff, and then I end up assessing them, and it's tracking issues, it's dynamic visual acuity goes down, those kind of things, processing. So that ends up being more of my assessment, dual tasking, those kind of things, how well they do. Yeah, tracking a ball. Sometimes they get that kinesthetic awareness is off. If they crack their head really bad, neck injury or something with it. Um, most of my patients that I've seen, yeah, are still athletes though. So it's
Yeah.
definitely how do we work on yeah, tracking. Softball, baseball have been the big ones I guess I've seen. Seem to be the ones that come to me most. And it's odd because it's always like they can't hit a ball. What can so it's like, yeah, they report some dizziness, but then they'll come in and them and their parents will be like, yeah, they just can't hit the baseball anymore. You're like, okay, well, there's some stuff we can work on, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I'll be honest too, I haven't seen like a ton. I saw a lot more in Marshall than I have since out in Michigan. Only a handful of concussions that I've dealt with out here, but um yeah, first thing, trying to identify that trajectory and I guess in you guys I'd like your feedback on this too, but I mean it's still like still kind of wild how much the general like, oh, I went to see my GP, I'm good. They told me to go be in a dark room,
Hmm.
right. Don't
Really?
do
right?
anything.
Like
That's
Really?
still
as
pretty
far as
Really?
common.
like just shut it down and it's like, well, like the general consensus for quite a while has been like, no, we need to move, we need to keep a schedule, we need to
Get to that
expose and
thresh, yeah,
recover,
get to that threshold and
and
back off. Yeah.
to that point, Casey too. I mean, like a lot of the athletes, I mean, regardless of trajectory too, I mean, you still are like trying to get cardio to an acceptable level, doing a lot of dual tasking, doing a lot of visual acuity too, because it's just like those are requirements for sport. And so yeah, I guess that's for those that are out there PT wise that do treat this, or those that are just listening, and you might have kids that play sports, or you might play sports yourself. It's
Hmm.
like in terms of the fastest possible recovery, like you should be moving, you should be doing things, you should be, under the supervision of a trained professional, but it shouldn't be the, hey, go sit in your room and until you feel better, and then we're gonna go right back to a football game,
Hmm.
you know. So
Right. No,
Yeah.
you need to phase it in. And I mean, that's been around for a while. And going back, it's kind of circling back to the Tua situation and listening to Coach McDaniel's talk. Um, he made a lot of clinical sense to me because they said that he's passed every single test that he could possibly pass at that point, like with
yeah,
his return to sport. They said the next phase, he's just got to get back into practice,
yep,
non-contact first, and see how he holds up. And he had some illusions in there. He didn't outright say it, but it really sounds like kind of a little bit of what Casey's maybe talking about in the visual track, but more like mental processing. Like
Yeah.
as a quarterback, especially
Make a
how fast.
decision in 1.7
Mhm.
seconds.
Has it
You know?
affected, has it slowed down your decision making, your reaction time, everything like that when you're actually like playing full speed?
Yeah, you wonder how much
But
of
then
that
how
stuff you can capture on a test, you know?
No, you
Like
got to get,
return
I
to
think,
sport. It's so hard.
I do think some of that. And what does it hurt? I mean, if you bring him into non-contact practice, you're going to know. I mean, hey,
Hmm.
if he's looking
no, but
off,
the
yeah,
the
Seeing
wild thing
ghosts.
though is like, I mean, how I mean, I think so often things are like, I don't know, at least that I've seen, ultra conservative when we talk about like return to sport, right? Like he hasn't been in, like he just was in non-contact practice this week, correct? And the overwhelming thing is like he's gonna play on Sunday, right? Like that's a pretty quick progression, right?
yeah,
Um, I think anyways, I don't know what your guys' take is on it.
Yeah, I think it's fast, if I'm gonna be honest. I mean, we're talking of tissue in your body that heals. Your brain's pretty slow. I mean, it'll
Yeah,
heal, but it takes time. Um,
yeah,
and honestly, most healing, quote unquote, we see in the brain is more plasticity, your brain rewiring around areas that are healing. So you're actually not even necessarily healing, you're just finding ways to make your tasks
to
work again,
compensate.
right? The brain's
Yep.
amazing because it can do that, but it is
yeah,
one of
But
those
then,
things where you talk about long standing, right? He's cleared all the tests. His brain's figured it out again. That doesn't necessarily mean that damage isn't there. And then the next
right,
time you get hurt, now where are you going to go? Now you got to go around
yeah,
this part of your brain. Now you got to go around this part of your brain. So it's just tough when, well, he's been cleared by everybody. He's fine. It's
yeah,
like, yeah, he is, but how much
ish.
longer can you do that for? You know,
And
like your brain does only have so much capacity to rewire. We'll see that with gunshot wounds, things like that. I mean, there's a limit to what your brain can rewire. If you damage enough of your brain, you're
but
done ski.
the
Like,
the interesting
scary.
thing though is he's obviously like a severe case, right? I mean, I would say that's the most severe case in recent memory. I can't remember anybody else that's been through anything like that. But then, even like interesting, like Malik Neighbors earlier in the year, like he's in concussion protocol, and like 2 days later, he's at a Travis Scott concert, you know,
yeah,
and he plays
yeah,
next week, right? Like, and you're
yeah.
like, man, like again, I guess it makes me rethink. Obviously that's a
Well,
billion-dollar business,
it is.
but it's like, man, it's like thinking of like how quickly I progress somebody in the clinic, and am I too slow on that?
Are
Am I
we
too
too conservative,
conservative?
right? Tua
But then
claims,
it's like
did you read that quote?
you don't.
He claims
Oh,
that he was
go
symptom
ahead.
free 2 days after injury. So that like he got injured on a Thursday night. He claims he hasn't had a symptom since Saturday the 14th of September,
That's wild.
right? But that's what he says. And again, I mean, now he's got to pass tests and he's got to pass cognitive tests. He's got to get back into the field, get back to practice. But I mean, if what he's saying is true, then I think you have to weigh that a little bit in the process if he's being honest about symptoms. That's always a big,
Yeah,
the big asterisk there. We used to
yeah.
always, we used to always be so critical because we knew there was a lot of kids that a lot of high schoolers that would come in and maybe they were exaggerating symptoms because they wanted a different cop out to like quit their sport
Quit. Yeah.
or to be done without having to tell the coach, like
But it was tough too on the parent side. I feel like so often there was like kind of this chasm where it was either like my kid can never play again, or or it's
or
like
the guys who
they're
were like, come
faking it.
on, you.
They're faking it. You
Oh yeah,
little.
I had a dad one time called me up. He's like, "Come on, we played ball. We got our bells rung. We turned around and played." I'm like, "Yeah, but that doesn't mean that was
Does
right
it mean it's
either."
right?
Right, wasn't the
It's
smart choice.
it's somewhere in the middle, and it takes a whole group to make those decisions. And obviously, he's got a massive crew around him to help guide that. And
Yeah.
the other thing that I'd say, you're right. This is definitely the most public and visible version of this in the NFL recently. But this has been going on in like mixed martial arts and boxing for decades. Yeah,
Yeah,
the old expression, guys that are punch drunk, and should Muhammad Ali have, like, there's guys who feel like his handlers were guiding him way past his prime. He took a ton of abuse. Um,
you're
Even when his,
probably
when his
correct.
reflexes were gone. Because in the prize fighting world, the old expression, and man, I used to hear this 15, 20 years ago when I first got it in watching it as a fan, guys saying, hey, once you get, guys can have an iron chin. Like this big famous heavyweight from Brazil, Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, hadn't been knocked out, and he took so much punishment. He'd be called like a zombie, like because he could just take so much abuse and like never stop, and then tap guys out with jujitsu. Well, the old adage though is once he finally got that bell rung, and the guy connected the right way, after that it gets easier and easier and easier to get your lights turned down on you. And that's
Yeah.
what guys were saying in the fight game for decades. And it kind of fits exactly what we're talking about, like the sequential aspect of the cumulative and sequential aspect of concussion management is the fact that after, as these things happen, you're, you got to regulate that a little bit and protect them from themselves.
Yeah, I think there's capacity there. I don't know if they're related, but I will say, as a guy who liked to party a little bit in his youth, same thing. I feel like once you've blacked out one time, you got friends, man, they do it all the time. Like it just gets easier.
Oh, interesting.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean that's a level of brain damage as well, right? We know drink alcohol, it kills
Is
brain
it?
cells. I
Way to
mean,
scare everybody.
well, I'll be honest, like don't drink till you black out. Those listening that think it's a harmless fun. Um,
That's a surprise to anybody.
yeah. So I
What?
mean, it's similar, right? It's not that same level, but I do think your
Hmm.
brain's like, shut it down, man. Like maybe that's protect mode in some ways too, you know?
Yeah.
Um, it's wild. I don't know. I don't know the answer, you know? How do you, I guess, how do you advise your students too, your patients, your young kids? It's tough. I mean, it is love of the game, and it might not happen ever again. But boy, I do think when seems like once you get them, boy, it's boom, boom, boom. It gets to be more and more. Do you guys think neck strength plays a role in concussions as a therapist? I always hear that, you know,
Hmm.
but I
Again,
can't
in
say I,
theory, it seems to,
right?
the stronger, more stable your neck is. It's kind of like what I said with the with the new helmets and the Guardian caps, just like I guess reducing some of that
Oh,
velocity.
you don't need eccentric control. You just need a cowboy collar.
And you
True.
got a cowboy collar,
Built
you put
in.
all of it together, you're gonna be fine. There, you'll be impervious to head injuries.
Because I don't know, you hear people talk about that, and I don't know how much it gets trained, you know? Like,
Probably
uh,
very minimally.
right? Do you see a lot of these teams going out and doing neck planks or anything? I mean, like, it is interesting, you know?
It used to be a
Um,
big staple of our rehab program, though, especially early
yeah.
on when
Well, that's why I was curious.
you couldn't
Uh,
get too aggressive. And I never got to answer Jeremy's question, but really, I I maybe had one patient over like each of the last 2 years. A lot of that's been taken over by Ryan here, who's been a guest on the pod. He handles a lot of that, and from a timely aspect with the university, they want to get those kids in soon, and
Yeah.
I'm just in a different spot. Um, but yeah, going back to some of those protocols we helped establish and those phased returns, like cervical isometrics and stabilization were always part of it. It was always included in there, no matter what, regardless.
like kinematic awareness, like built into that too, when you talk about like neck retraining.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
we used to do cervigenic kind of retraining. Remember we had the laser beams, Jeremy,
Yeah.
with laser
Yep.
headsets. Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
So we've worked through all that too. I don't know. I don't ever see them getting used, but then again, that could be more of a private treatment room intervention that I'm missing out on. I'm not exactly observing it from others.
Yeah, I used to have people out in the gym with the laser pointers on their head, and I would like have a sign hold up and they would turn the other way, and then I'd have them jump 180 and try to hit the sign with the laser pointer fast, you know, like trying to field the ball or something. That was like my kinesthetic awareness to that. They like that quick, trying to track where I was fast, trying to hit a target 20 feet away with the laser pointer. Like there's some fun stuff. I enjoy the tracking stuff, you know, pitching, having them track the ball first and then trying to grab the ball and then trying to hit the ball, like just progressing through some of that stuff. That focus, like I don't know if you guys ever done like this string of pearls thing where they have like
Mhm.
two circles and you got to make the third and run
Yeah,
it through. That's cool. Like those things they're harder to do than you realize.
right. Yep.
Actually, have you guys remember like magic eyes? Those like pictures you'd look at?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
have a few of those books too. I'll have patients try to find the picture as fast as possible.
Relax
Oh,
the eyes.
you
Yeah.
just gotta cross
Uh,
your eyes.
Yeah,
Cross your eyes and
nailed
let
it,
them
Jeremy.
refocus.
But that is part of it too. Like their convergence divergence seems to be off. So I do different training with that too. And like you can, even with a magic eye, you can pull the picture out or push the picture in. And I don't know, like a lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
people work on that. Whether you converge or diverge your eyes depends on
yeah.
if the picture pops out of the page or pushes into the page. So try to cue patients to do that too can be interesting for them, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Little tips and tricks I found for the tracking aspect of it, because again,
yeah.
that's usually what I um, focus on. Simple things like card sorting, Sudoku, stuff like that I'll use
Yep.
for cognition.
Right. We would do so much of the cognition with dual task. That was the fun ramp up stuff when you could really get somebody going
It
with
is
like
fun.
proprioception or it was fun doing like some agility sprints. Like I always have them like reaction sprints or ball chase sprints. And, and as they're catching their breath, be like, all right, now, remember, tell me those 5 names that I asked you to remember, or tell me those 7 names. And
Dylon,
Dylon, Dylon,
Dylon,
and Dylon.
Dylon. Spit
yeah,
hot fire.
that we went through the state capitals, made me brush up on my state capitals quite a bit and get them to think because and it's always like telling the athlete too, and for those guys listening, it's like trust me, nobody's judging you, or how oh, man they can't figure this out or give them mathematic problems to do because you're always telling them it's not about whether you're right or wrong. It's the fact that
Mhm.
you're trying to get the brain working on something cognitively at the same time you're pushing their physical body.
Well, and it'd be no different. Like you could say any sport, right? Like you catch the ball, you turn upfield. Can I read this defender and what I think he's going to do and make a decision, right? Like
Yeah.
that's bang bang, right? Like in a lot of ways, unless you want Doling putting his cowboy collar on and hitting you in the clinic,
It
we're
would
gonna
be
do
too
state
slow. It wouldn't help.
capitals.
That
I'm
would not help
sorry.
anyone's reaction time.
We're just gonna do state capitals
You're
instead.
just gonna do that. But that's true. And as we would navigate these conversations with athletes, and you'd have some people that were like, I've always been terrible at math. And you're like, they almost want to just default to that right away. Well, I can't figure that problem out. You'd give them like, hey, tell me 14 times 12. And
Yeah,
the whole thing is just to get them to pause and you want them to start thinking through it. But they'd be like, oh, I don't know. I can't think of it. No, I want you to think through it. I want you to try to do this math or even give them like a pencil and a piece of paper, like try to write it out or something just to get, as your heart rate's coming down, let's try to get you thinking through this.
but it's again, it's like that's the other thing I'd say to the general public. Like it's again, yeah, it's not about the problem, but it's the things that you're already doing in your sport just reactively, right? Can I read where a defender's at? Can I track this ball, right? So you're doing a lot of those processes anyways. It's just automatic when you don't have a brain injury. So, uh, yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I gotta say, going back, circling it right back to Tua, I gotta say this is one of the first times too, as just a pure objective fan, and I'm not a I don't really have any ties to the Dolphins one way or another or Tua. You, I hope for the best for him. I don't want to see him get concussed again. Like I truly can
No,
say that, and I just don't want to see that guy go down, not for him and not for the sport. I think it'd be terrible for both.
Totally agree. It would not be one of my top three most exciting sports moments, if I'm going to be honest.
No, I mean, it could be exciting in a bad way. I mean,
Well, yeah, I don't know.
jeez,
This is
Nick.
bad. Holy moly. Yeah,
things
just,
can be exciting in
gosh.
bad ways, Jeremy.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know. Like, give me another example.
Well, I mean, yeah, well, like, okay. I don't want
Like,
to,
like a dude breaks into your house to murder you. That's exciting in a
In a
bad
very
way.
bad way.
exactly, right?
I don't know if exciting is the word I use. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Hey, you can call it whatever you want, but the excitement
I
level is
feel
going to
like
be high.
generally, I feel
like,
like
I feel like
you're right,
excitement has to go
Casey.
You're
with
going to have
A
happiness.
anxiety.
positive, it has a positive
There's
connotation to
such
it, I
a
think.
Right? Like
Don't you
excitement
think
has to
Generally.
be
excitement's too see, I think of excitability, like I guess we're seeing it differently in the definition of it, maybe slightly differently.
Well,
I
obviously.
understand. I understand you're putting the positive shine on it. Yeah.
I think that's the definition of being
Well,
But to
Casey and I
honest.
get
are
to
just glass half full.
Yeah.
see,
Goaling's like, wow,
I'm
you could
such an
die, and
optimistic
that would be
guy.
exciting.
Yeah, I think most people would refer
You're
to those
watching a
situations as
death.
like stressful. Like, this is a stressful
They say that
moment.
the difference between anxiety and excitement is all in perspective.
You know,
That's
that
true,
that
very true.
actually
That's a fact.
that quote came out I think it was earlier today or maybe even
Yeah.
yesterday, but Joe Mazzulla, the coach of the Celtics, the NBA is kicking off tonight, and they're like, is there pressure, to repeat? And he goes, there's no pressure. We're all gonna be dead soon. We either win or we lose. There's no pressure. We're all gonna die.
Well, that
It's like,
that doesn't
oh,
make any
I guess
sense.
that's the way to look
What's
at it.
soon? What
It
is
won't
soon?
matter.
Right?
It
Like,
won't matter. Yeah, 50 years it won't matter, but there's no pressure. So
I'm not a nihilist when it comes to that stuff. So that's what you learned about me today. Not a voyeur, not an exhibitionist, not a
not a
nihilist.
Nihilist.
nihilist. Nice.
No,
All
that's probably
exciting.
good.
It's all
Probably
exciting.
good.
It's so exciting.
All right, let's
So yeah,
roll
cut into it.
into that top three. Yeah, so we're gonna talk tonight, top three most, I don't know, fun environments, most exciting environments, and these are events we attended. Not so much maybe events we're in, that biases you a little bit. So we'll have fun
Mhm.
with it. I think it'll be interesting to see what everybody comes up with. Obviously, I'm kind of a biased guy. You guys don't be surprised if it's NDSU heavy slash all of it. So
Sure.
um definitely like yeah, had to go back and think. There's a lot of super exciting games I've been to. I've probably been to 60, 70 NDSU football games, I suppose. So
Big baller.
definitely, well, he's season ticket holder, 6 games a year. I've been a season ticket holder for 14 years. I mean, it adds up, plus playoffs.
Yeah.
So a lot
Yeah.
of moments, but that's definitely my main event, I would say, would be football. And
Yep.
so it's tough. Like if I went to a really good baseball game, I still don't know if I'd love it as much as a football game.
It's you're right. It would have to be something really, really special.
Like
It'd have
a
to be
moment, right? Like Miracle on Ice. I'm not a hockey guy, but if I was there, that would have been
right.
exciting, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Kind of neat.
I agree
Yeah.
with you. I
So
agree with you.
Kind
I
of
think
neat.
back like baseball to me, and this isn't, I mean, the list is not like what you watched, but like I think back, shoot, 15 years ago, the Twins had to go like one extra game to see who won the AL Central.
163. Yeah.
And and I think it was White
Oh
Sox, right?
nine.
Yep. And
White Sox or Tigers?
I thought it was White Sox,
Maybe. Yeah.
but
Were you
yeah,
there?
it went like 10 or 11 innings. No. So
No.
that would catapult it up. It'd take a lot for baseball to get high. That's like so
it would have
who
to
wants to go
be
first?
per Nick. Somebody would have to get murdered on the field for to be exciting for me.
Okay, I'm gonna quick before just to put a pin in that because Casey's
I
here's
mean, 3 or 4 dudes just getting gunned down maybe would be exciting. I don't know.
what is the definition of excitement? Excitement is a feeling or a situation of full of activity, joy, exhilaration, or upheaval. So there you go. Excitement is any kind of state of arousal, according to psychological terms. Arousal means that the heart rate increases, the sympathetic nervous system increases activity, and the brain begins to signal an increased production of hormones.
Let's not forget.
Uh,
Let's not forget the joy part. I feel like you
It's
glossed
an
over
or. You
that.
missed the or. It didn't say it
or
had to
joy.
include all of it. Joy
I don't know.
or upheaval.
I am going to put
Yeah.
a poll up after this and see what the
Yeah,
listeners
pull.
think.
Yeah.
We'll poll it. All
Well, I
right.
just defined it for everybody. So
Goaling is morbid.
Yeah, no kidding.
somebody
Now we know.
go. Somebody kick off this
It's
thing.
just
I'm too excited right
a
now.
I'll go.
voyeuristic exhibitionist. All right. Yeah, hit it up, Jeremy.
So
Jerry.
my number 3, the first time I was to the Metrodome as a Vikings fan. So it was week 4 of the 1998 preseason.
No. Oh, night preseason. Oh,
Yeah. Man,
Perfect.
it was special, man. I had such a big family growing up. Like those things weren't an option regularly. So even to get to go down there and be in the game, to my recollection, that's a long time ago. Nobody really played. I mean, it's the last preseason game. Like
Hmm.
we were good. We were set. Um, but we won and just a great environment. And I'll speak a little bit more on the Metrodome later, but yeah, that's my number three.
That's a good
Ooh.
number three. Yeah, I think that's a good point too. My family did zero sporting events growing up, like
Same.
zero. So
Nothing
it is
professional,
it
like in
is
college.
interesting, had I been a kid, I think maybe some of these things would change. Like your perception of things is so different. And I don't know if
Hmm.
I would
Oh
have loved
man.
them more or hated them more. Honestly,
Yeah.
like some
I
some
mean, I
kids
think it
love it
was
and
yeah, I
Like
think it was
Gunner,
12 or 13 at the time. I
yeah,
mean, it was still I mean,
yeah.
definitely special for sure. So,
yeah, yeah. I think each kid's different too, and just how they process it and like what they get
Right.
into,
And how special it is for him.
Yeah.
My number
that was
three,
lame.
I'll let Nick finish because he's probably got like way cooler top three than me.
Yeah.
My number
Way more
three
exciting.
was, and you guys will see a trend here. It was NDSU versus Illinois State, January 2015. So FCS championship game, Carson Wentz.
Hmm.
It was a cool environment, right? You had two Missouri Valley teams playing in the
Yep.
championship. Doesn't happen often, just because of how seeding works and how they do travel. They typically knock each other out during the regular season. Both teams definitely looked pretty monstrous. It wasn't one of these like come out of the blue. Like it was a freight train heading towards each other, hadn't played each other in the regular season. Just how it worked. That was the game they
Yeah.
skipped. So it was awesome. It was cold that day in Texas. I want to say it was like 50 maybe. Like we were not dressed for it. We had to go to Walmart in the morning, get hats, gloves.
Mhm.
Everybody is just bundled up in the stands. You're drinking
Yeah.
your
Love
hot
it.
chocolate, cheering. And that
Hot
game was just
chocolate.
awesome, right? We were in the end zone. Illinois State scores with under 2 minutes to go right in front of us. Just heartbreaking. I forget who their quarterback was, but he was a monster, and he just ran it in right in front of us. Carson Wentz gets the ball back with maybe a minute 30 left, and you're like, the game's over. No way he's going to drive down the field. And boy, just drove right down that field and scored. Like it was
Yep.
such a moment. So that was just cool because NDSU hadn't had like a ton of comeback wins like that, where it was, last minute at that point. He had done JMU earlier that year, I guess, but no, that would be the next year to JMU. So not a ton of those. So it was exciting because it was nervous. Heart rate, blood pressure, all those things were up. Total
Yeah.
definition of
Was
it.
there any joy in there? Was
Ton of
there any
joy at the
joy?
end,
All
right?
It's a
So
little
right.
joy.
so
All
that's my number three.
right.
It
Yep.
was a raucous environment when you get two conference guys fighting in a championship. The
Oh,
fans
it was
into
big.
it.
That's cool.
The
Yep.
weather was that cold, almost North Dakota playoff weather, right? You get kind of used to that stuff when you played in high school and it was 40, 50 out. So it was
Hmm.
just a cool environment for me.
Oh, awesome
Awesome.
game. I think it was like what, January 10th, 2015. I think that
Something
game
like
took
that.
place. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that one very, very well. Out of all the championships they won. Mine, that's gonna segue nicely, and I'm gonna have super recency bias on this because my number three is actually this past Saturday's Bison Jackrabbits
Oh,
home game.
oh,
And it's
Yeah,
it's
so
not
good.
for it's for so much of the context of what it mattered. Like, for to people to SDSU fans, I mean, the Bison, they were the whipping boy to the Bison for a good 10 years, right? Um, Second pony to them. And now for the last, like, the Bison hadn't beaten the Jacks in 5 years, and for the last two, the Jacks are the defending national champs. I mean, you had number one versus number two, all that stuff just laid out there, all that animosity, you can't ask for anything better, and when it's truly number one versus number two, it added to it. And I thought everything NDSU and the Fargo Dome did to, like, get everything going, from the introductions through I don't know, just keep the fans being electric almost the entire time. I got home after we got home on Sunday. Michelle was asking me, she's like, kind of seemed like a boring game, like they had it on TV in the background. And I said, it really wasn't, though. For a game that was 9-7 for the majority of it, just never felt it actually made every single possession and every snap seem that much more important. And I don't know about UKC, but it seemed like every time we punt it back to SDSU, you're waiting, okay, this is where the dam's going to break and
Right. The
their
shoe's going to
offense is going
drop.
to,
They're going to start
yep.
rolling.
And it never happened. and you were like, and then,
Mm.
force another punt, get the ball back. And then just to have that chance, because we were talking and I said, going in that last drive, um, there's no doubt that I think Mark Gronowski was the best player on the field up until the final drive. And then Cam
Right.
Miller became the best player on the field for that game. And that's what, I mean, I'm not a huge quarterback guy. I mean, they're definitely the most valuable players on the teams, but I do think it's a team sport, but I also love it when you have a quarterback duel like that with two guys who really probably are the best at the FCS level. I mean, we'll see what Malott does the rest of the season, but that was damn electric, like from start to finish. So that was my number three.
Yeah, definitely a short lister for me. Again, that recency bias. I was like,
Mhm.
but yeah, it was an awesome environment. It's good, like the old school playoff environments at home. It
Yes.
felt probably even better than most playoff games I've been to at the Dome. Just it felt more important. I don't know. Like to beat the Jacks is so important for people now. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's a good rivalry.
It's fantastic. All right, Jerry,
Yeah.
what's your number
All right.
two?
Number two. So this is back to the Metrodome. My second trip there, 2009. Brett Favre leading the Vikings to victory against the San Francisco
You
49ers.
were there. You were
I
at that
was
one,
there.
the Greg
Yep,
Lewis
in the
game.
upper
What?
deck. Greg Lewis game. Yep. So, I mean, you talk about that game. It was fun, man. We left Marshall at like freaking 5 in the morning. Like, and it was
Hmm.
just a crazy long day, right? But we got there. We had some guys in Patrick Willis jerseys, like a couple rows up from us. Like we had some
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
banter going on back and forth, right? And just a tight game, right? And then Greg Lewis, little tiptoe grab back of the end zone, right? And in those days, no smartphones, right? Like
Yeah.
you didn't have the TV simulcast at the same time where you're going like, I've seen 17 replays. This is good, right?
Yeah.
It's just like just a weird silence, right? While they're going
Hmm.
through the review in the Metrodome. Gets called good, place just freaking erupts. And the best part about it, right? Like, so obviously an amazing win, right?
Yeah.
But the best part about it is like I don't even think we got into the hall, like the hall yet before the Packers suck chance erupted. It's like
Yeah, that's so
Yes.
good.
it's just like such a tight game, and it's just like we're not even out of the dome yet, and it's like Packers suck,
Yeah.
Packers suck.
Got to remind
That's
everybody.
my number two.
In case you forget.
That's a great number two.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic one.
Yeah, those moments. That's what it's about. My number two, again, to continue my trend, would have been NDSU versus Sam Houston State, 2011 championship game, played January 2012. Boy, didn't know what to expect going to it. It was NDSU's first championship game. Sam Houston was rolling into that game undefeated, seemed like destiny, right? They're hour or two away from Frisco. It's like a home game for them. They
Yeah.
were averaging over 400 yards of offense a game that year. Nobody could even get close to them. NDSU was relatively unknown. um, just kind of rolled into that game. Nobody knew what to expect. I actually had tickets on Sam Houston's side because I had to pick up secondary tickets because we didn't really know how things worked back then. So I'm surrounded by Sam Houston fans. Got my Bison gear on. Fans, I gotta say, their fans were actually really cool. Like they were
Hmm.
super
Hmm.
nice.
Yeah.
Talked to us the whole time, so that was kind of that cool environment. They were cheering hard, but they weren't like jerks throwing stuff at us. And even when NDSU started to gain momentum and get ahead, NDSU had a fake punt, which ran it for like 30 yards, set up the go-ahead score, and then later on they finished off with an interception that led to the final score. It was just awesome. And then that moment of rushing the field, like the
Yeah.
first time you rush a field on a championship, like it's hard to replace. I've done it 9 times since, and none of them felt like that time. That was just it felt awesome to just jump down, land on that field, and just
One that
take
like
off.
mattered the most.
Yeah, and you never
It's
knew,
cool.
for you, it's like this is probably it, right? Like most. FCS teams have won zero.
Yeah.
Very, obviously only a handful have won one. Many of them had moved on to FBS. Very few repeat championship champions at that point. So it was like this
Yeah,
could be it, like I'm gonna enjoy the
they're
hell out of
studs.
this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was just surreal. It was just amazing, electric. It was fun.
Yeah.
So
That's a very good one. Very good one.
my number two.
Um, my number two is going to be the first one outside of football here, and it took place, I believe, December 12th, 2015. Um,
WWE?
no, Las Vegas,
Oh.
Nevada. It was Conor McGregor knocking out Jose Aldo to win the UFC featherweight title
Ooh,
Woo!
at
that'd be
MGM
fun.
Grand. It
That
That'd be a
is
lot
was
of
fun.
fun.
it was electric,
Exciting.
and never been surrounded by so many people from Ireland in my entire life.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun to be around them and learn more about their culture, their country, and kind of what brings them all the way to Vegas in
They
December.
like potatoes and Guinness.
Oh,
Kind of,
they
yeah. I
hate
mean,
snakes.
they
They hate
probably
snakes?
they hate snakes. They're
Yeah?
they're good
Yeah.
people. Good,
Yeah.
and
That's your
so
kind
the
of
fight
people.
itself, super. If you guys aren't
That's my
familiar
kind
with
of
it,
people.
it is a little bit to me. It's a little of a bummer because Aldo was so good. He was really like dang near untouchable at that time, but he comes walking right into a McGregor is at his peak
Peak,
and
yeah.
knocks him out in 13 seconds. They go right to it and
That's the
just
only bummer, right?
a
Like, I
wild,
mean,
yeah.
it's cool, but it's like, oh, sweet. Like,
And it
can you
is
imagine
it's
going to
like
a football game and you're like, it's done after 13 seconds? You're
yeah,
just
you're
like,
kind of like,
oh,
wow,
that's it?
what just happened? And we were kind of in the middle of the arena and you're like, oh, okay, did we we were waiting for the replays, because
Is there
fighting
anything
is so
else?
fast. It's so
Do we go
fast,
home?
right? And you're like, no, I mean the strikes are so fast, you can't even tell what knocked him out
Yeah.
and what exactly happened. And they're showing replay after replay, and McGregor, like he, sprints, jumps on top of the cage and celebrates and does flips and gets the crowd riled up. And then what was like the icing on the cake of this excitement time is we had to navigate through the casino to get back to our hotel room, and these guys are nuts. These Irish fans are literally like standing on top of slot machines, dancing around, waving Irish flags, all in the MGM Grand Casino, and security's doing everything they can to like
They don't
get
care.
these people to calm down. They don't care. This is like their Super Bowl plus a World Series all wrapped into one. And yeah, that was quite the experience. That's my number two.
Nick, oh man, that's so cool. Like you hear stories about that too, and right, like other countries, like or even in the
Yeah.
World Cup,
Right.
like
I
people
think of soccer.
dying,
Destroy your country.
Yeah,
people
they
dying,
riot. Yep.
and
When
you're
they
just like,
when it goes bad, when they lose it, they go and like flip over buses and start vehicles on fire and Molotov cocktails, everything.
in some ways, right? Like you'll get the occasional USA chant during the Olympics, but like I feel like we have nothing that matters to us that much, and that kind of sucks, right?
Mhm.
Like, um, you know, I mean, not that I want to see people killed, but it's just
It's very exciting,
another.
Jeremy.
It is very exciting, but it's just another layer, right? Like of just pride in your country and where you're
Yeah.
from, and I don't know, something I think we've probably lost over time, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's wild. That's
It
cool.
was
That's a
it
That's a
really
was
cool
cool
very
story
story.
amazing.
for sure.
Very cool. Yep.
I can't wait to see what your number one is,
I
man.
know.
That's sweet.
Pretty good number two. That's why I saved
No.
him for last.
Yeah.
So my number one was my first time to the big house, 2019. It was not a
Oh,
great game, guys. So
sorry.
Last time I think Ohio State's beat us, unless they got us in 2020. They probably got us in
COVID
2020.
year. Who knows?
Anyways, 2019. We were ranked 18th. Ohio State was ranked third. Um, I think it was like something like 115,000 people in there. Um, you get to fly over before it. Again, there's just something like, I don't know, there's something I love about history. Like that's definitely one of the historic stadiums around the US. Just jam-packed. It was really tight for the first quarter. It was 14-13. Ohio State was up after the first quarter. and then they went on to trounce us 56-27. But
No big
it's
deal.
wild, right? Like both J.K. Dobbins went for 4 tuds, and so did Justin Fields in that game. So
Mm.
I wonder what that interaction is like with Harbaugh now like with the Chargers. Yeah, like I wonder how often that gets brought up, where he's like, "You freaking regularly killed us."
Yeah, they own that
But
rivalry for so long.
it was
I
fun,
think they're
right?
going to
Like we
own it
get
this year.
yeah, I know.
But that's
We
so the
we
big
didn't
house.
need to go
So
there.
so you got
But here's
115. You said I just want to clarify. You said 115, right?
115,000 people, November 30th of 2019. So we were probably some of the first COVID people, like maybe, I don't know.
Maybe
Where it
maybe you got a
started.
little
Um,
taste in
Eat
it.
any
but
eat any
it
pangolin
was
while you were there?
no. But it was
Just checking.
a lot of fun because these two Ohio State kids were just mashed, right? It's like it's a noon game. And they like we're on bench seats. Like we didn't have great
Right.
seats, we didn't have
It's
terrible
got to
seats.
be
We're about
to fit
20
115.
rows
Yeah.
up. And so these guys like I'm there with my wife, my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and these guys like stand right behind us. And I could turn around and I'm like, bro, what are you doing, man? He's like, man, these are our seats. And I'm like, man, no, they're not, right? Like, so we get like going to this back and forth, right? And
Hmm.
it was like row 20, section J, and they were supposed to be in section K. So I make this big to do. I was just like, look at this, look at these idiots from Ohio State. Like, they don't even know, they can't read letters. Like, so I
They don't know
just,
words.
And they and they were like
so
scoreboard,
So no,
scoreboard.
this is before the game. It was much
It's
better.
good.
This is
Yeah.
before the game. So like Amy's like punching me, like she hates
Yeah.
conflict. So she's like, "You're an idiot. Shut up." So,
Let them
so
be.
but I kept going, if you can believe that. And so these guys finally leave after I make this huge scene. And it was sweet because there was a guy like in front of us he was probably late 40s. His son was like 13, and his dad was there too in his 70s. And he's just like, he turned around to me and he shook my hand and he's just like, thank you so much. He's just like, he goes, We live in Virginia. I went to Michigan. We flew out here for this game. He's like, my son needs to know what this rivalry is about.
Yeah.
So, on
Funny.
top of it, yeah, just a really cool experience. Yeah, the game wasn't as exciting as the venue, but yeah, that's my number one.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That is
That's the environment. That's what you
yeah.
want for college football.
Right. I've always wanted to hang out there with that many people. Always thought that's so cool that they pack that many folks in. Been a bucket lister for me. So
Ooh,
very
come on out.
cool. Yeah, I'll have to make something happen. All right, my number one, and again, I'm going to continue my trend because these are the most exciting events for me. This may surprise people, but my least favorite team in FCS football is not SDSU. It is James Madison. Absolute,
Mm-hmm.
just holier than thou team. They always felt like even though NDSU has, I think, 4-1 record on them, like they always seemed like they thought they were just a better team all the time.
Those were
Um,
intense games too.
and every game was super good. They famously knocked NDSU out in 2016 out of the playoffs. First time NDSU was denied championship since they started winning. Um, Obviously, their fans got on the message boards from then on and said, we're NDSU
We're
killers.
here.
They're old news, right? Like
It
nobody's ever
was
going
in
to
the
hear.
dome. That was in the
We're
dome.
here.
Nobody's ever going to hear. Yeah, it was in the dome. Nobody's ever going to hear of NDSU again. They played in 2018 in the championship, which was an awesome game, but not the game on my list.
Ooh.
2019 would be the NDSU JMU championship game.
Trey Lance.
Trey Lance, that environment was just absolutely phenomenal. Both teams showed up. It was probably a 50-50 split in that stadium. And I'm not a big confrontation guy. I'm just like a good fan. I cheer for my team. I do what I'm supposed to do. I don't trash talk a lot. That
What?
That's not
that's
I
fun
don't
though. You're
believe
missing it.
that.
You're
I don't believe
well,
that.
that game was their crowd's just trash talking the whole time. We're trash talking the whole time. Trey Lance does his thing, right? Just looks unstoppable running the ball. Can't say, throwing that great, but
Mhm.
just they
Yep.
couldn't stop him. They couldn't figure him out. He had some just phenomenal plays. They get down to, I think, like the 5 yard line, James Madison, to win that game. And you're like, or maybe it was to go into overtime. I can't remember
They
totally,
used to go to
but
overtime, maybe.
probably to go to overtime and threw a pick. Jimmy Football gets a pick right at the goal line, and that I was right at that goal line, right in front of where he picked it. And then
Yeah.
obviously turned around and just started talking crap to all those James Madison fans that were pouring beer on us minutes before that. So, just that was an awesome environment. James Madison does this streamer thing where they throw streamers everywhere, so it just was nice to shove that in their face. Yeah, it was awesome. It was great. It was definitely a blast. That was definitely my favorite game to go to, I think, of all time. Just the hatred, beating them
That
back to
sounds like
back
a
because
good
NDSU
environment.
beat them the year before in an absolutely phenomenal game as well. Easton Stick just played out of his mind that game. Like, talk about quarterbacks putting teams on their back, Nick.
Oh yeah.
Both those games were just quarterbacks doing their thing. So
Yeah.
that's my number one.
Yeah. That's a great number one. That was a great game. And I think it was, I just looked it up. It was 28-20.
2020.
So they would have needed the touchdown 2 point, but it did it got all the way down there before the pick. So it was quite the exciting game. Um, my number one, which is I get to visit the Metrodome, and ironically, one of the same
Yeah.
years that Jeremy had referenced. So, but technically in 2010, this was the NFC divisional round playoffs. The Vikings hosted the
Ooh.
Cowboys January 17th, 2010, um, and defeated the Cowboys 34-3 in the Metrodome. And just a butt kick. So the game itself, right? I mean, it's not like it's all academic, I think, as Brad Nessler would have said at like halftime. Academic from here on out. Brett Favre played out of his mind. Sidney Rice played out of his mind.
Sidney Rice. Oh yeah.
What a great combination. But what made that so special to me was those guys winning so dominantly. When going into the game, nearly every single analyst on every single channel was picking the Cowboys to beat the Vikings.
Yeah.
If you turned on Fox, they were doing their countdown show, and like everybody, the only person who picked the Vikings was retired Chris Carter, and obviously he had his bias,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So everybody else was like Cowboys, Cowboys, Cowboys. Could be Cowboys and Saints. Cowboys were they were like the first team to beat that mighty Saints team that year. Um, and everybody's just thinking that's going to be the collision course. And instead, the Vikings just trounced them, beat up Tony Romo, who has already been mentioned here, real
Yeah.
bad.
Good
Romo
announcer.
Vision didn't help him there.
Good
And, and
announcer.
and then at the end, the best part was like it to this day, it's the longest I've ever stuck around after a Vikings game because people were just celebrating, they were singing Skull
5 o'clock.
Vikings. And well, I think the game, it's playoffs. So in my mind, I think it was like a 1 or 2 o'clock kickoff.
Yeah.
Something maybe in divisional round, it's they get a little bit later, not as many games. Um, but sticking around with like all the other fans, like sing Skull Vikings, and then literally like we did it right. We didn't go back home. We're all
That's
commuters, right? We've talked about that. Like you commute, you go back home, but we took the next day off and we're able to stay up in the metro and watch like the AFC game that was going on. I think it was Chargers and Jets. But just celebrate and be like, oh man, the Saints don't even know what's coming, and we're gonna be in the Super Bowl. And that's a team of
should have
destiny type
been.
stuff.
Should
Yeah.
have been. We
But that
were a
game
team of
itself was
destiny.
just so much fun. I still smile every single time I think about just that day, that whole weekend, and that environment. So that's my number one.
Awesome number one.
Uh,
I think that's fun to hear about that. Yeah, sports, grown men playing games, but man, it brings people together. It means something, I think
Yeah,
there's something to be said for it. So,
yeah, definitely.
and that concludes episode 73 of PT Shop Talk. Thanks everybody for listening. As always, you got questions, comments, hit us over at ptshoptalk@gmail.com. Check us out on YouTube if you want to see faces to the voices. Check out the old podcast anywhere you can get podcasts and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, all those things. So until next time, I'm Casey Hansen. With me as always, Jeremy Van Klompenberg and Nick Doling. Peace.